and welcome back to Super English Talks. I'm your host, Sara, and today we are going to dive into a powerful and fascinating topic, the psychology of motivation, how to stay inspired and achieve your goals. This episode is designed especially for English learners at the B1 to B2 level who want to improve listening skills, while also learning about self-development, motivation, and lifelong learning. So, grab your headphones, sit back, and let's explore together. Let me ask you a question. Have you ever set a goal, felt really excited about it in the beginning, and then, after a few days or weeks, lost that excitement? Maybe you wanted to learn English every day, go to the gym regularly, or start reading more books. At first, you felt strong and full of energy, but then, slowly, your motivation disappeared. This is a very common experience, and today, we will learn why this happens, how motivation works, and most importantly, how you can stay motivated for the long term. Motivation is not just about feeling good or getting excited. It is a psychological force, something inside us that pushes us to act. Psychologists define motivation as the process that initiates, guides, and maintains goal-directed behavior. In simple words, motivation is what makes us start, keep going, and finally reach the finish line. Without motivation, even the best goals can remain unfinished dreams. There are two main types of motivation that we should understand: intrinsic motivation and extrinsic motivation. Intrinsic motivation comes from inside you. It happens when you do something because you truly enjoy it or find it meaningful. For example, learning English because you love the sound of the language, or because you enjoy connecting with people from other countries. On the other hand, extrinsic motivation comes from outside rewards. This could be getting a better job, receiving good grades, or gaining praise from others. Both types of motivation are important, but intrinsic motivation is often stronger in the long run because it comes from your inner passion and values. Now, you may wonder, why do people lose motivation so easily? One reason is that we expect motivation to be constant, like a fire that never goes out. But the truth is, motivation naturally goes up and down. Think of it like the waves in the ocean. Sometimes the wave is high, sometimes it is low. The key is not to depend only on feeling motivated. Instead, we need to build habits, systems, and environments that keep us moving forward, even when the wave of motivation is small. For example, let's say you want to improve your English listening skills. If you only listen to English when you feel motivated, you may practice for 3 days and then stop. But if you create a habit, such as listening to a podcast every morning during breakfast, you don't need to think about whether you feel motivated or not. You just do it automatically, like brushing your teeth. Habits make motivation less important because the action becomes part of your daily life. Another important idea in the psychology of motivation is goal setting. Studies show that people who set specific, clear goals are much more likely to achieve them. Instead of saying, "I want to be better at English," you should say, "I will listen to 10 minutes of an English podcast every day." Notice the difference. The first goal is vague and unclear, but the second goal is measurable and realistic. Clear goals help your brain focus and create a sense of progress. And progress is one of the biggest fuels for motivation. Let's pause here and reflect. If you are listening right now, think about one area of your life where you want to stay motivated. Is it your English learning? Is it your career? Is it your health? Whatever it is, write down one clear, specific goal for yourself. Remember, small goals are better than big vague ones. For example, "I will learn 5 new English words every day" is more powerful than "I want to know more English." In this podcast, we will also explore different psychological theories of motivation. For example, Maslow's hierarchy of needs explains that people are motivated by different levels of needs, starting from basic physical needs like food and safety, then moving to social needs like friendship, and finally reaching self-actualization. which is about becoming your best self. Another theory, called self-determination theory, says that we stay motivated when three things are present: autonomy, having control over our choices, competence feeling skilled, and relatedness feeling connected to others. Don't worry. If these terms sound academic, we will explore them with clear, simple examples. So, today's journey will be about understanding what motivation really is, why it rises and falls, and how you can use psychological strategies to stay inspired and reach your goals. Think of this as both an English learning session and a self-improvement session. You will improve your listening, learn new vocabulary, and gain tools that you can apply immediately in your life. By the end of this episode, I hope you will not only understand the psychology of motivation, but also feel more confident about your ability to achieve your goals, whether that's mastering English, advancing in your career, or simply living a more meaningful life. Now, let's go deeper into the science of motivation, why we start and why we stop. Think about a time when you started something new. Maybe you began learning English, joined a gym, or tried to develop a healthy habit like reading every night. At the beginning, you felt full of energy, right? You were excited, maybe even inspired by a new vision of yourself. This feeling is sometimes called the honeymoon phase. Just like in a new relationship, the beginning feels magical, everything seems possible. But after a few weeks or months, that magical energy often fades. The question is, why? Psychologists explain this with a concept called the dopamine effect. Dopamine is a chemical in our brain that plays a big role in motivation. Many people think dopamine is the pleasure chemical, but it is actually more like the anticipation chemical. It doesn't just make you happy, it makes you chase. Dopamine spikes when we imagine the reward of doing something. For example, when you picture yourself speaking English fluently, or when you imagine yourself looking stronger after exercising, dopamine is released. This is what gives you that initial push to start. However, as time goes on, the brain gets used to the idea. The excitement of the reward becomes normal, and dopamine levels go down. That is why the initial fire of motivation fades. It's not that you are lazy or weak, it's simply how the human brain works. The good news is, once you understand this, you can learn strategies to manage it. One key strategy is to create small wins along the way. The brain loves progress. Even tiny steps can keep the dopamine flowing. For example, if your big goal is to read one English book, break it into smaller goals. Read 1 page today, then 2 pages tomorrow. Each time you achieve a small step, your brain feels rewarded, and this keeps you moving forward. Another important concept in the psychology of motivation is the difference between approach motivation and avoidance motivation. Approach motivation is when we are driven by the desire to achieve something positive. For example, I want to learn English so I can study abroad. Avoidance motivation is when we are driven by the desire to avoid something negative. For example, I don't want to fail my English exam. Both can be powerful, but research shows that approach motivation is usually more sustainable. Why? Because chasing something positive makes you feel inspired, while running away from something negative can make you feel stressed and anxious. Let me give you a practical example. Imagine to English learners. The first learner says, I want to practice English every day because I love learning languages, and I want to travel the world. The second learner says, I must practice English every day or else I will embarrass myself in the exam. Both learners may study, but the first one will probably enjoy the process more and keep going longer. So, whenever you set a goal, try to focus on what you want to gain, not just what you want to avoid.
Now, let's talk about why people stop even when they know their goal is important. One big reason is something called the expectancy value theory. This theory says that our motivation depends on two main things: how much we value the goal and how much we expect to succeed. If you highly value something but believe you have little chance of success, your motivation will be low. For example, you might really value speaking English fluently, but if you constantly tell yourself, "I'll never be good at this," you will feel unmotivated. On the other hand, if you believe strongly in your ability, even a small goal can feel exciting. This is why belief in yourself is not just a cliché. It is actually a psychological factor in motivation. When you believe you can succeed, your brain invests more energy. This belief is often called self-efficacy. The psychologist Albert Bandura introduced this idea, and his research shows that people with higher self-efficacy, that is, people who believe in their own ability, are more likely to stay motivated and reach their goals. So how can you build self-efficacy? One way is by looking back at your past successes, no matter how small. Remind yourself, "I learned 50 new words last month, so I can definitely learn 50 more." Another way is by surrounding yourself with supportive people. When others believe in you, it helps you believe in yourself. Finally, break your big goal into manageable steps, so each small success builds your confidence. Another reason people stop is because of environmental triggers. For example, if you want to eat healthy but your kitchen is full of junk food, your environment is working against you. If you want to study English but your phone is constantly sending you distracting notifications, your environment is again blocking your motivation. This is why successful learners often design their surroundings to make their goals easier. They keep a notebook and pen ready on their desk. They download podcasts in advance. They silence unnecessary notifications. They make the environment their partner, not their enemy. Finally, let's discuss the role of energy and rest in motivation. Many people blame themselves for feeling unmotivated, but sometimes the problem is not mental. It's physical. If you are tired, stressed, or lacking sleep, your brain simply does not have the energy to focus. Motivation is not only about willpower, it is also about having the physical and mental energy to keep going. That's why good sleep, healthy food, and regular exercise are not just good for your body. They are fuel for your motivation. To summarize this section, we start things because our brain releases dopamine when we imagine rewards. We stop when the dopamine fades, when we lose belief in ourselves, when our environment blocks us, or when we run out of energy. The solution is to create small wins, focus on approach motivation, build self-efficacy, design supportive environments, and take care of your physical health. Remember, motivation is not magic, it is psychology. And once you understand how it works, you can use it to your advantage. Let's begin with one of the most famous theories, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Have you heard of it before? Abraham Maslow was a psychologist who believed that human motivation is shaped by a pyramid of needs. At the very bottom of the pyramid are our basic needs: food, water, shelter, and safety. If these needs are not met, it is very hard to think about anything else. Imagine trying to study English while you are starving or worried about where you will sleep tonight. It's almost impossible. Above the basic needs, Maslow talked about social needs, the need for love, friendship, and belonging. Humans are social creatures. We feel motivated when we are part of a group or community. For example, many English learners stay motivated when they join study groups or practice clubs because they feel a sense of belonging. Next comes the need for esteem. This is about respect, recognition, and feeling valuable. We want to feel proud of ourselves and to know that others see our efforts. This is why getting positive feedback from a teacher, boss, or even friends can give us such a powerful motivational boost. Finally, at the top of Maslow's pyramid is something called self-actualization. This means becoming the best version of yourself, reaching your full potential, and living in alignment with your values. For some people, this means becoming a great artist, scientist, or leader. For others, it might mean being a great parent or contributing to their community. Self-actualization is about fulfilling your personal purpose. So Maslow's theory teaches us that motivation grows in stages. If the lower needs are not met, it is very difficult to focus on higher goals. But once those needs are satisfied, we naturally strive for bigger and more meaningful achievements. Now let's move on to another important theory, the self-determination theory. This theory was developed by Edward Deci and Richard Ryan, and it focuses on three key psychological needs: autonomy, competence, and relatedness. Autonomy means having control over your choices. We feel more motivated when we do something because we choose it, not because someone else forces us. For example, if you decide to learn English because you want to travel, that's autonomy. But if you are only learning English because your parents or teacher told you to, your motivation might feel weaker. Competence means feeling capable and effective. When you feel that you are improving and becoming better at something, your motivation grows. This is why English learners often feel encouraged when they can suddenly understand a movie scene or have a smooth conversation. Those moments make you feel competent. Relatedness means feeling connected to others. Humans are motivated when they feel supported, accepted, and valued by other people. This is why many learners improve faster when they have a study partner, a teacher, or a supportive online community. Self-determination theory teaches us that when these three needs, autonomy, competence, and relatedness, are satisfied, motivation becomes stronger and more sustainable. Another classic theory is the expectancy theory, which we briefly mentioned in the last section. This theory says motivation depends on three beliefs. Expectancy: can I succeed if I try? Instrumentality: will success lead to a reward? Valence: do I value that reward? When all three are high, motivation is strong. If one is missing, motivation drops. For example, if you think learning English is valuable and you believe you can improve, and you know that success will lead to a better job, then your motivation will be powerful. But if you doubt any of those three, your motivation weakens. Let's also talk about Hertzberg's two-factor theory. This theory divides motivation into two groups: hygiene factors and motivators. Hygiene factors are things that prevent dissatisfaction, like salary, working conditions, and job security. They don't necessarily motivate you, but if they are missing, you feel unhappy. Motivators, on the other hand, are things that truly inspire you, like recognition, personal growth, and meaningful work. For English learners, hygiene factors might be having good study materials and a quiet space, while motivators might be enjoying the challenge of mastering a new language or receiving praise for progress. Finally, let's touch on goal-setting theory by Edwin Locke and Gary Latham. They found that clear, specific, and challenging goals motivate us far more than vague or easy ones. For example, saying, "I want to learn English" is too vague, but saying, "I will learn 10 new words every day for 1 month" is specific and measurable. Even better if the goal is challenging enough to excite you, but not so difficult that it feels impossible. The sweet spot between challenge and achievability is where motivation thrives. All these theories may sound different, but they share one common lesson. Human motivation is not random. It follows patterns. We are motivated when our basic needs are met, when we feel competent, when our goals are meaningful, when we believe we can succeed, and when we receive recognition along the way. Now here's the practical part. You don't need to memorize all these theories. What really matters is using the lessons in your daily life. Ask yourself questions like, do I feel in control of my learning? That's autonomy. Am I improving and seeing progress? That's competence. Am I connected to others who support me? That's relatedness. Do I have clear, specific goals that excite me? That's goal setting. Am I focusing on positive rewards instead of just avoiding negative ones? That's approach motivation. By reflecting on these questions, you can design your study habits, your work, and your life in a way that maximizes motivation. To wrap up this section, Maslow taught us about needs, self-determination, Theory explained autonomy, competence, and relatedness, expectancy. Theory showed us the power of belief. Hertzberg reminded us about motivators versus hygiene factors, and goal-setting theory taught us to set specific, challenging goals. Together, these theories give us a complete map of human motivation. We explored Maslow's pyramid, self-determination theory, and even goal-setting theory. But theory alone is not enough. We need something practical. We need to translate psychology into daily habits and systems that actually keep us motivated.
Let's begin with a very powerful idea. Motivation is not just about inspiration, it's about systems. Many people wait until they feel motivated before they take action. For example, a learner might say, "I'll study English when I feel ready," or "I'll exercise when I feel inspired." But here's the truth. If you wait for motivation, you will spend most of your life waiting. Motivation often comes after you start, not before. This is where habits come in. A habit is a behavior you do automatically, almost without thinking. Once a habit is formed, it requires less energy, less decision-making, and less willpower. For example, brushing your teeth every morning is a habit. You don't argue with yourself about whether or not you should do it. You simply do it. That's the power of habit. Removes the need for constant decision-making. So, how do we create habits that support motivation? Psychologists and habit experts suggest a few key steps. The first step is make it small. If your goal is too big, it feels overwhelming. Let's say you want to read English books every day. Instead of telling yourself, "I will read for 1 hour every day," you can start with just 5 minutes a day. The small habit is easier to begin, and once you start, you often continue. This is sometimes called the 2-minute rule. Start with something you can do in 2 minutes or less. For example, open your English book and read 1 paragraph. That small action builds momentum. The second step is make it obvious. Habits are triggered by cues in your environment. If you want to remember to practice English, place your English notebook on your desk where you can see it. If you want to eat healthier, keep fruits in a visible bowl on the kitchen table. Our environment shapes our behavior far more than we realize. The third step is make it rewarding. Motivation grows when your brain associates an action with pleasure. After completing your study session, reward yourself. Maybe enjoy a cup of tea, listen to your favorite song, or check off a box on your progress chart. Rewards tell your brain, "This action feels good. Let's do it again." The fourth step is track your progress. Humans love to see evidence of improvement. That's why fitness apps, language trackers, and journals are so popular. When you track your progress, even small wins, you reinforce your sense of competence, which boosts motivation. You might write down the number of words you learned, the minutes you studied, or even record yourself speaking once a week. Over time, you can look back and feel proud of how far you've come. Another powerful strategy is habit stacking. This means attaching a new habit to an old one. For example, after I brush my teeth, I will listen to an English podcast. Or after I pour my morning coffee, I will write 1 sentence in English. By connecting a new habit to something you already do, you increase the chances of success. Now, let's talk about systems versus goals. Many people set goals, but they forget about systems. A goal is the result you want to achieve. Like I want to learn 1,000 English words this year. A system is the process that makes the goal possible. Like I will study 10 new words every day at 7 p.m. Motivation grows stronger when you focus on the system, because the system is under your control. Goals give direction, but systems give progress. Another key factor is consistency over intensity. Many learners make the mistake of starting too strong. For example, they study English for 3 hours one day, then feel exhausted and skip the next week. Motivation drops because the habit feels too heavy. Instead, consistency matters more than intensity. Even 15 minutes of English practice every day is more effective than 3 hours once a week. Why? Because consistency builds identity. You begin to see yourself as the kind of person who practices English daily. That identity fuels motivation. Speaking of identity, let's discuss the identity-based approach to motivation. Instead of focusing on what you want to achieve, focus on who you want to become. For example, instead of saying, I want to learn English, say, I am becoming an English speaker. Instead of saying, I want to run a marathon, say, I am a runner. This small shift changes how you see yourself, and identity is one of the most powerful motivators. Of course, even with habits and systems, we all face obstacles. Sometimes we get tired, distracted, or discouraged. That's normal. The secret is to design your habits so that missing one day doesn't destroy your motivation. There's a popular rule: never miss twice. If you skip one day of practice, that's fine, but make sure you don't skip the second day by following this rule. You prevent one mistake from becoming a pattern now. Let's apply these ideas directly to English learning. Imagine you want to improve your listening skills. Instead of saying, I will listen to English for 2 hours every day, start small. Say, I will listen to one English podcast while having breakfast. Make it obvious. Place your headphones next to your plate. Make it rewarding. Allow yourself to enjoy your favorite snack while listening. Track your progress. Write down each episode you listen to in a notebook and stack the habit. After brushing your teeth, play the podcast. Over time, this simple system turns into a powerful routine that requires little effort to maintain. Finally, remember that habits and systems are not about perfection, they are about progress. You don't need to be perfect every day. What matters is that you keep showing up, keep practicing, and keep building the identity of a motivated learner. So, the lesson of this part is clear. Motivation is not something you wait for. It's something you create through habits, systems, and consistency. Now, we're going to look at something even more fundamental: emotions. Because if we don't understand how feelings influence motivation, we risk losing energy, passion, and focus. So let's start with a simple truth. We are emotional creatures before we are rational creatures. Many times, people believe they make decisions with logic, but science tells us that emotions play the leading role. Think about it. When you're excited, everything feels easier. When you're discouraged, even small tasks feel heavy. That's because emotions are powerful drivers of behavior. Psychologists explain that emotions act like signals. They tell us what matters and push us to act. For example, fear can motivate us to avoid danger. Joy can motivate us to repeat a positive experience. And frustration can motivate us to change something that isn't working. Emotions provide energy, and that energy translates into action. Now, let's apply this to motivation and learning. Imagine you want to improve your English. If you feel bored, you probably won't study. If you feel stressed, you might avoid practice altogether. But if you feel curious, confident, or inspired, you are much more likely to stay motivated. So, one of the keys to lifelong learning is managing your emotional state. This brings us to a concept called emotional regulation. Emotional regulation means being aware of your emotions and learning how to use them effectively. For example, let's say you feel frustrated while practicing English listening. Instead of giving up, you can reframe the emotion. You might say to yourself, this frustration means I am challenging myself. It means I'm growing. By changing the way you interpret your feelings, you transform a negative emotion into a motivational force. Another important idea is intrinsic emotions versus extrinsic emotions. Extrinsic emotions come from outside factors like pressure from teachers, exams, or other people's opinions. Intrinsic emotions come from within like curiosity, excitement, or personal pride. Studies show that intrinsic emotions are much more powerful and long-lasting. If you study English only to pass an exam, you may lose motivation after the exam is finished. But if you study because you genuinely enjoy expressing yourself, your motivation will remain strong for years. Let's look at some specific emotions and how they connect to motivation. Joy and excitement. These are the easiest motivators. When learning feels fun, it doesn't even feel like work. That's why gamified apps, funny YouTube videos, or interesting podcasts can boost motivation. If you enjoy the process, you don't need willpower. You naturally want to continue curiosity. This is one of the strongest emotions in lifelong learning. When you're curious, you're motivated to explore, discover, and ask questions. Think about children. They learn so quickly because they are naturally curious. As adults, we must keep curiosity alive. Ask yourself, what interesting thing can I discover in English today? That question keeps motivation fresh. Pride. Feeling proud of your progress is a deep motivator. When you finish a book in English or have your first conversation with a native speaker, pride gives you energy to keep going. That's why celebrating small wins is so important. It keeps your emotions positive. Frustration. At first, frustration feels negative. But if you reframe it, frustration becomes a signal that you are pushing your limits. Instead of saying, "I'm bad at this," you can say, "I'm growing." This small shift transforms frustration into fuel. Fear. Fear can block motivation if it becomes overwhelming, but it can also push us to prepare. For example, fear of failing an exam can motivate you to study harder. The secret is balance. Too much fear creates stress, but a little fear can sharpen focus. Hope. Hope is the belief that things can get better. It's a quiet but powerful emotion. Learners who feel hopeful are more resilient. They keep going even when progress feels slow.
One way to use emotions for motivation is by creating emotional anchors. An anchor is a memory or association that triggers a positive feeling. For example, maybe you listen to a certain English song that always makes you smile. If you play that song before studying, you anchor joy to learning. Or maybe you imagine your future self speaking English fluently in another country. That mental picture becomes an anchor of hope and inspiration. Another technique is visualization. Athletes use this all the time. They imagine themselves winning before the competition. You can do the same with learning. Visualize yourself confidently speaking English, giving a presentation, or traveling abroad. When you feel the emotions of success in advance, you motivate yourself to take action in the present. It's also important to remember that motivation goes up and down naturally. No one feels excited every single day. That's normal. The key is not to chase constant happiness, but to build resilience. Resilience means you keep going even when emotions are low. In other words, use positive emotions when they are strong, but rely on habits and identity when emotions are weak. Now let's connect this to English practice again. If you want to stay motivated, choose materials that spark your emotions. Don't just read boring textbooks. Watch movies that make you laugh, listen to podcasts that inspire you, or read stories that make you curious. When learning feels emotional, motivation follows naturally. Another strategy is to connect learning with personal meaning. Ask yourself, why does English matter to me? Maybe it's because you want to study abroad, travel the world, or connect with international friends. When you link learning to your values, you create emotional motivation that is stronger than simple obligation. Before we wrap up this part, let's summarize the key lessons. Emotions are the fuel of motivation. They push us to act. Positive emotions like joy, curiosity, pride, and hope keep us inspired. Negative emotions like frustration or fear can also be transformed into useful energy if we reframe them. Emotional anchors, visualization, and meaningful goals help us use emotions effectively. Don't depend only on emotions. Combine them with habits and systems for long-term success. So the big idea is this: if you want to stay motivated, you must take care of your emotional life. Motivation is not just about logic, it's about feeling. Motivation is powerful, but let's be honest, it's not always reliable. Some days you feel inspired and ready to conquer the world. Other days you feel tired, distracted, or lazy. That's why we need something deeper, something stronger, self-discipline. If motivation is the spark, self-discipline is the engine that keeps you moving forward, even when the spark fades. Psychologists often describe willpower as a kind of mental muscle. Just like your body's muscles, your willpower can get stronger with training, but it can also get tired if you use it too much without rest. This concept is called ego depletion. Imagine you have a limited amount of willpower each day, like a battery. If you spend all of it resisting temptations, making decisions, or forcing yourself to focus, your battery runs out. That's why, at the end of a long day, it feels harder to make healthy choices. You're simply out of willpower energy. But here's the good news. Just like physical muscles, willpower can be trained and strengthened. And when we combine willpower with systems and habits, we create a lifestyle where success becomes automatic. So how do we train self-discipline? Let's break it down into some practical strategies. Start small and build gradually. Imagine, you want to improve your English listening skills. If you suddenly try to listen for 2 hours every day, you might succeed for a week, but eventually you'll burn out. Instead, start small, maybe 10 minutes a day, and build up over time. Every small act of discipline strengthens your mental muscle. It's like lifting weights. You don't start with the heaviest bar, you build strength step by step. Reduce decision fatigue. One of the reasons willpower gets drained is because we make too many decisions. What to eat, what to wear, when to study, which podcast to listen to. Successful people reduce these decisions by creating routines. For example, you might decide that every morning after breakfast, you'll listen to an English podcast for 15 minutes. No decision needed. It's automatic. The less you rely on willpower, the more energy you save for important tasks. N. Create friction for bad habits and remove friction for good habits. Self-discipline isn't just about saying no, it's also about designing your environment. If you want to practice English, put your headphones on your desk where you can see them. If you want to avoid wasting time, remove distractions from your phone. Make the good habits easy and the bad habits difficult. That way, you don't need as much willpower to make the right choice. Use the 2-minute rule. This is one of my favorite strategies. If a task feels too big, start with just 2 minutes. For example, if you want to write in English, tell yourself, I'll just write for 2 minutes. Often, starting is the hardest part. Once you begin, you usually keep going. This trick reduces resistance and makes discipline easier. Practice self-control exercises. Yes, you can literally exercise willpower. Researchers found that small acts of self-control, like using your non-dominant hand for daily tasks, avoiding sweets for a week, or keeping good posture, can actually strengthen discipline in other areas of life. It's like training your brain to say, I'm in control. Over time, this mental muscle grows. Reward progress, not perfection. Many learners give up because they expect perfect discipline. But the truth is, everyone slips sometimes. Self-discipline is not about never failing. It's about getting back on track quickly. Instead of punishing yourself for mistakes, reward yourself for progress. Maybe you didn't study every day this week, but you studied more than last week. That's progress worth celebrating. Now let's connect self-discipline to learning English more directly. Imagine 2 learners. The first depends only on motivation. When they feel excited, they study. When they don't, they stop. The second learner builds discipline. They study even on days they don't feel like it. Who do you think will succeed? In the long run? Of course, the disciplined learner. That's the secret to mastery, showing up consistently, no matter what. Another important idea here is delayed gratification. This means choosing long-term rewards over short-term pleasures. Maybe watching TV in your native language feels easy now, but listening to an English podcast will bring you long-term benefits. People who master delayed gratification, choosing future success over present comfort, achieve more in every area of life. The famous marshmallow test illustrates this. In this experiment, children were given one marshmallow and told they could eat it immediately or wait a little while and get 2 marshmallows. Years later, researchers found that children who waited, the ones who had self-control, were more successful in school, work, and health. The same principle applies to learning. If you resist short-term distractions and stay focused, you build a foundation for long-term success. But here's something important. Willpower is not just about restriction. It's also about alignment. When your goals align with your values, discipline feels easier. For example, if you study English only because your teacher tells you, it feels like a burden. But if you study because you dream of traveling, connecting with people, or getting a dream job, discipline feels natural. The stronger your why, the less discipline feels like punishment, and the more it feels like purpose. We can also use implementation intentions. This means planning in advance how you'll act in certain situations. For example, if I feel tired after work, I will still listen to a short 5-minute English podcast before dinner. This kind of plan creates automatic behavior. You don't waste energy thinking. You already know what to do. Let's also talk about self-compassion. Many people think discipline means being hard on yourself, but research shows the opposite. People who forgive themselves after failure are more likely to stay disciplined in the future. Why? Because guilt and shame drain energy, while kindness restores it. Discipline doesn't mean being a drill sergeant. It means being a wise coach. Before we close this part, let's summarize the key lessons. Willpower is like a muscle. It can get tired, but it can also grow stronger with practice. Self-discipline ensures progress even when motivation fades. Small habits, routines, and environment design make discipline easier. Delayed gratification leads to long-term success. Self-compassion keeps you consistent after failure. So the big idea is this. Motivation gets you started, but discipline keeps you going. If you combine both, you become unstoppable.
Now, let's dive into another powerful idea: mindset. Mindset is the lens through which you see yourself and the world. It shapes how you respond to challenges, failures, and opportunities. And believe me, the way you think about your abilities can either fuel your motivation or destroy it. Psychologist Carol Dweck introduced the famous concepts of fixed mindset and growth mindset. Let's break them down. A fixed mindset is the belief that your abilities are permanent. People with this mindset think, I'm either good at something or I'm not. I'm smart or I'm not. I can learn languages or I can't. With this view, failure feels like proof of weakness and challenges feel threatening. For example, if you believe you're bad at English, every mistake you make confirms your fear, and soon you may stop trying altogether. A growth mindset, on the other hand, is the belief that skills can be developed with effort, practice, and learning. People with a growth mindset think, I'm not good at this yet, but I can improve. Mistakes aren't proof of weakness they're part of. Growth challenges aren't threats, they're opportunities to learn. This mindset fuels motivation because it gives you permission to keep going, even when things are hard. Let's put this in the context of learning English. Imagine two learners. The first has a fixed mindset. They think, I'm just not a language person. When they mispronounce a word, they feel embarrassed and stop practicing. The second learner has a growth mindset. They think, this mistake is helping me learn. When they mispronounce a word, they laugh, correct themselves, and keep practicing. Which learner do you think will make more progress? Of course, the one with a growth mindset. Here's the secret. Your mindset is not permanent. You can choose to shift from fixed to growth. The key is to become aware of your inner dialogue, the things you say to yourself. In difficult moments, do you say, I can't do this? Or do you say, I can't do this yet? That little word yet makes all the difference. Now, Let's look at how mindset influences motivation. 1. Mindset changes how you see effort. If you have a fixed mindset, effort feels like proof that you're not talented. If I were smart, this would be easy. But with a growth mindset, effort feels like an investment. You think, every hour I spend practicing is making me better. Suddenly, effort becomes exciting, not discouraging. 2. Mindset changes how you see failure. A fixed mindset sees failure as evidence of inability. I failed, so I must not be good enough. But a growth mindset sees failure as feedback. I failed, so now I know what to improve. This difference is huge because failure is a natural part of learning. If you avoid failure, you avoid learning. But if you embrace failure, you accelerate learning. 3. Mindset changes how you see challenges. A fixed mindset avoids challenges because challenges risk exposing weakness. A growth mindset seeks challenges because challenges are opportunities to grow. If you want to stay motivated, you need to welcome challenges. They are your gym for growth. 4. Mindset changes how you see others. Success. With a fixed mindset, someone else's success feels threatening. If they are good, that means I'm not. But with a growth mindset, others' success becomes inspiring. If they can do it, maybe I can too. Instead of jealousy, you feel motivated. Now, let's make this practical for English learners. How can you develop a growth mindset in your daily learning? Reframe mistakes. Instead of thinking I made a mistake, think I learned something new. Each error is a step toward improvement. Use the word yet. Add it whenever you feel stuck. I don't understand this grammar yet. I can't speak fluently yet. This word creates hope. Celebrate effort, not just results. Even if you don't see quick improvement, praise yourself for showing up. Every practice session is a victory. Learn from feedback. Instead of feeling defensive when corrected, see it as free coaching. Feedback is not criticism, it's a gift. Surround yourself with growth-minded people. If your learning community values effort and progress, their mindset will influence yours. Let me give you a real-life example. There's a famous story about Michael Jordan, one of the greatest basketball players of all time. Did you know he was cut from his high school basketball team? Many people would have taken that as proof they weren't good enough. But Jordan had a growth mindset. He used that rejection as fuel, trained harder, and eventually became one of the greatest athletes in history. His success wasn't just talented, was mindset and discipline. The same applies to language learning. If you think fluency is only for talented people, you'll stop too soon. But if you believe fluency is possible with effort, you'll keep going until you achieve it. Motivation thrives in a growth mindset because you believe your work matters. Another important idea is the self-fulfilling prophecy. If you believe you can improve, you act in ways that create improvement. You practice more, you try harder, you take risks. But if you believe you can't improve, you avoid practice, you give up easily, and your belief becomes true. In other words, your mindset creates your reality. Asterisk, asterisk now. Some people ask, does a growth mindset mean I'll always feel positive? No. Having a growth mindset doesn't mean ignoring difficulties. It means embracing them. It means saying, this is hard, but I can learn. I don't know the answer, but I can figure it out. It's realistic optimism, not blind positivity. Before we close this part, let's summarize the key lessons. 1. Fixed mindset limits growth. Growth mindset fuels it. 2. Your inner dialogue shapes your motivation. 3. A growth mindset transforms effort, failure, and challenges into opportunities. 4. You can train a growth mindset by reframing mistakes, celebrating effort, and learning from feedback. 5. Your mindset influences your long-term success more than talent alone. So, the big idea is this. Your mindset is the foundation of motivation. If you believe you can grow, you will keep moving forward. If you believe you're stuck, you'll stop before you begin. In the next part, We're going to explore another critical ingredient, the role of habits in sustaining motivation. How do daily routines and small actions create unstoppable momentum? Stay tuned because this is where motivation turns into lifestyle. We learned that believing in your ability to grow fuels motivation, while believing you're stuck kills it. Now, let's move one step further and talk about something equally important, the role of habits in sustaining motivation. Motivation is often described as a feeling, an energy, or a spark. And yes, it can feel amazing when you're inspired to take action. But here's the problem. Feelings come and go. Some days, you wake up motivated and ready to conquer the world. Other days, you feel tired, lazy, or distracted. If you depend only on motivation, you'll be inconsistent. And inconsistency is the enemy of progress. That's where habits come in. Habits are automatic actions, things you do without much thought. Once a behavior becomes a habit, you don't need to feel motivated to do it. You just do it. Think about brushing your teeth. You don't ask yourself every morning, do I feel like brushing my teeth today? You simply do it because it's part of your daily routine. Imagine if learning English, exercising, or reading became as automatic as brushing your teeth. That's the power of habits. Now, let's connect habits with motivation. Habits are like the bridge between short bursts of motivation and long-term success. Motivation gets you started, but habits keep you going. If you only rely on motivation, you'll move forward in short sprints and then stop. But with habits, you keep walking step by step, even when motivation fades. Psychologists say that habits are built through a simple loop, cue, routine. Reward. The cue is the trigger that tells your brain to start the behavior. The routine is the behavior itself. The reward is the benefit you feel after doing it. Let's look at an example. Suppose you want to build a habit of reading in English every evening. The cue could be finishing dinner. The routine is picking up your English book and reading for 20 minutes. The reward could be a cup of tea you enjoy after reading, or the satisfaction of checking the activity off your calendar. Over time, your brain connects the cue with the routine and the reward, and it becomes automatic. But here's the key point. Small habits matter more than huge bursts of action. Many people start big and burn out quickly. For example, they decide to study English for 3 hours every day. They do it for 2 days, then get exhausted and quit. A better approach is to start small, maybe 15 minutes a day, and build consistency. Once the habit is established, you can increase the time. Motivation helps you dream big, but habits help you succeed consistently.
Let's talk about some practical strategies to use habits to fuel your motivation. Start tiny. If you want to learn English, start with something so small that it's impossible to fail. For example, I'll learn 1 new word today, or I'll listen to 5 minutes of an English podcast. Small wins build confidence, and confidence fuels motivation. Use habit stacking. Habit stacking means attaching a new habit to an existing one. For example, after I drink my morning coffee, I will write 1 English sentence. Or, after I brush my teeth, I will listen to a short English lesson. This technique makes it easier to remember and sustain new habits. Focus on identity, not just results. Instead of saying, I want to learn English, say, I am the kind of person who practices English every day. When your habits reflect your identity, motivation becomes part of who you are. You no longer have to force yourself. You simply act according to who you believe you are. Celebrate small wins. Each time you complete a habit, celebrate it, even in a small way. Smile, say yes to yourself, or mark it on your calendar. This celebration reinforces the behavior and makes you want to repeat it. Make it easy. If you want to practice English, make it as easy as possible. Keep your notebook and pen on your desk. Save your favorite podcast on your phone. Remove friction. The easier the habit, the more consistent you'll be. Make it rewarding. Connect your habit with something you enjoy. For example, listen to English podcasts while walking outside, or reward yourself with a treat after completing your practice. Your brain loves rewards, and they help habits stick. Now let's bring this back to motivation. Here's the truth. Motivation is not just about big emotional highs. It's about showing up every day, even in small ways, and habits make that possible. When you build strong habits, you don't need to rely on feeling motivated, you build momentum. And momentum creates its own motivation. Think of motivation like a spark and habits like wood on a fire. The spark starts the fire, but without wood, it dies quickly. Habits are the steady fuel that keeps the fire burning day after day. Another thing to remember is that habits also reduce decision fatigue. Every day, we make hundreds of small decisions. Should I study now or later? Should I read or watch TV? Should I practice English or scroll through social media? Each decision uses mental energy. But when something is a habit, you don't waste energy deciding. You just do it. This makes it much easier to stay motivated over the long term. For English learners, this means building daily rituals. A morning habit of writing 3 English sentences, a lunch habit of listening to a podcast, an evening habit of reviewing vocabulary. These rituals keep you moving forward, even on days when you don't feel inspired. Over time, the progress you see from your habits will become its own motivation. Let me share a simple but powerful story. A man once wanted to get in shape, but he struggled with motivation. So he made a rule. He would go to the gym every day, but only stay for 5 minutes. At first, people laughed. How could 5 minutes make a difference? But here's what happened. The man built the habit of going to the gym. Once that habit was strong, he naturally started staying longer. A year later, he had completely transformed his health. The lesson is this. It's not about intensity. It's about consistency. Start small, build the habit, and let the results grow. So, to summarize this part, motivation is a spark, but habits keep the fire alive. Small, consistent. Habits matter more than big, unsustainable efforts. The habit loop, cue, routine, reward, makes behaviors stick. Strategies like habit stacking, starting tiny, and celebrating wins can help. Habits reduce decision, fatigue, and create momentum that sustains motivation. The big takeaway is this. Habits are motivation made visible. They are the daily proof that you are moving toward your goals. If you want lifelong motivation, focus less on waiting for inspiration and more on building habits that carry you forward. Now it's time to go deeper and uncover something even more powerful: the power of purpose. Let me begin with a simple but important question. Why do you do what you do? Think about it. Why are you learning English? Why are you working toward your goals? Why do you want to grow and improve yourself? If your answer is clear and meaningful, you will always find strength to continue. If your answer is weak, vague, or shallow, your motivation will quickly fade. This is why purpose is the ultimate driver of motivation. Purpose is your why. It is the deeper meaning behind your actions. Without a purpose, motivation is fragile. With a purpose, motivation becomes unbreakable. Let's look at an example. Imagine 2 students learning English. Student A studies because their teacher told them to. Student B studies because they dream of traveling the world, working internationally, and connecting with people from different cultures. Who do you think will stay motivated longer? Of course, it's student B. Why? Because their purpose is strong, personal, and meaningful. Purpose connects your daily actions to a bigger vision. It gives meaning to small steps. For example, reading 1 page of an English book may feel insignificant. But if your purpose is to become a confident English speaker who can inspire others, suddenly that 1 page becomes part of a much larger journey. Purpose transforms ordinary tasks into powerful progress. Now, let's connect this to psychology. Research shows that people who have a strong sense of purpose live longer, are happier, and are more resilient in the face of challenges. Why? Because purpose creates emotional energy. It pushes you forward, even when you face difficulties. It's like having a compass that always points you in the right direction, no matter how stormy the sea becomes. So, how can you discover your own purpose? Let's break it down step by step. Ask yourself why. Start with a goal you want to achieve. For example, I want to learn English. Then ask yourself, why? Maybe your answer is, because I want to pass an exam. Then ask, why do I want to pass the exam? Perhaps your answer is, so I can study abroad. Keep asking why until you reach a deep and emotional reason. That's your true purpose. Connect with your values. Your purpose should match your values, the things that matter most to you. If family is important, your purpose might be to support them by getting a better job. If freedom is important, your purpose might be to travel and explore new opportunities. When your purpose matches your values, motivation feels natural. Create a vision. Imagine yourself in the future. Who do you want to become? How do you want your life to look? Picture it in detail. This vision gives you a clear destination, and your purpose becomes the path to reach it. Make it personal. Your purpose should be yours, not someone else's. If you study English only because your parents or teachers tell you to, you won't feel deeply motivated. But if you connect it to your own dreams and desires, you'll feel inspired every day. Write it down. Put your purpose into words. For example, I am learning English so I can connect with people from around the world, share my ideas confidently, and create a better future for myself and my family. Writing it down makes it real, and you can read it whenever you feel your motivation dropping. Now let's talk about how purpose sustains motivation in practice. Imagine you're tired after a long day. You have to choose, watch TV or practice English. If you have no purpose, you'll probably choose the easy option. But if you remember your purpose, like, I want to inspire others with my English skills, you'll feel a burst of energy. Purpose helps you push through resistance. Here's another example. Think of athletes who train for the Olympics. Do you think they always feel motivated? Of course not. They face pain, exhaustion, and even failure. But their purpose, representing their country, achieving excellence, fulfilling a lifelong dream, keeps them going. For English learners, having a purpose can be the difference between quitting after a few months and staying committed for years. If your purpose is strong, no obstacle can stop you.
Let's also talk about the connection between purpose and happiness. Many people think happiness comes from comfort or pleasure, but true happiness often comes from growth, contribution, and purpose. When you live with purpose, every challenge becomes meaningful. You stop asking, why is this so hard? And start saying, this is worth it. Now, I want to give you a practical exercise. Take a notebook and write down your big goals. Then, under each goal, write at least 3 reasons why it matters to you. Make sure your reasons connect to your values, your dreams, and your vision of the future. Keep this list somewhere you can see it often. Whenever you feel unmotivated, read your list. It will remind you of your deeper why. Let me share a quick story. There was a young woman who struggled to stay motivated in her studies. She often felt tired and distracted. Then one day, her teacher asked her to write down why she wanted to succeed. She wrote, I want to become a doctor so I can save lives and give my parents a better life. Every time she felt like quitting, she read those words. They gave her strength. Years later, she became a successful doctor. Her purpose carried her through the difficult times. So, what's the big takeaway from this part? It's this: purpose is the strongest fuel for motivation. Motivation that comes from external rewards like money, grades, or praise can fade quickly. But motivation that comes from purpose is deep, lasting, and powerful. To summarize: 1. Purpose is your why, the deeper meaning behind your actions. 2. A strong purpose makes even small tasks meaningful. 3. Purpose creates resilience, energy, and long-term motivation. 4. You can discover your purpose by asking why, connecting to your values, and creating a vision. 5. Writing down your purpose helps you stay motivated when challenges arise. The message is clear. If you want to stay motivated for life, find your purpose. When your why is strong enough, the how becomes easier. We learned that when your why is strong, your motivation becomes unshakable. Today, we are going to look at another powerful element that influences our motivation every single day: emotions. Now, let's start with a simple truth. We are emotional beings. Every decision we make, every action we take, is influenced by how we feel in that moment. Think about it. When you feel excited, you are more likely to try new things. When you feel fearful, you might hesitate. When you feel curious, you explore and learn. Emotions are like invisible winds that push us forward or hold us back. So, how exactly do emotions connect with motivation? Motivation is not just about logic or planning. It's not only about setting goals or writing down reasons. Motivation is also about how you feel in your heart and mind. A strong emotion can give you the energy to act, while a negative emotion can stop you in your tracks. Let's break this down by looking at some specific emotions and their impact on motivation. 1. Excitement. Excitement is one of the most powerful motivators. When you feel excited about something, it doesn't feel like work. For example, when you start learning English and you're excited about meeting new people or traveling abroad, you'll naturally put in more effort. Excitement gives energy. It makes learning feel like play instead of hard work. 2. Curiosity. Curiosity is another positive emotion that drives motivation. When you are curious, you want to explore, discover, and learn. Imagine watching a movie in English and thinking, what does that phrase mean? That curiosity pushes you to look it up, remember it, and use it. Curiosity makes the learning process enjoyable and natural. 3. Joy. Joy and happiness make learning and working much more sustainable. When you feel joy while practicing English, maybe because you successfully spoke to a native speaker, you want to repeat that experience. Joy rewards your brain, making it easier to stay consistent. But let's also talk about the so-called negative emotions, because they play a role too. 4. Fear. Fear can actually motivate you, but in a different way. Fear of failure, fear of embarrassment, or fear of missing out can push you to take action. For example, if you are afraid of failing an exam, you might study harder. However, if fear becomes too strong, it can paralyze you. That's why it's important to manage fear carefully, turning it into fuel rather than letting it control you. 5. Frustration. Frustration is a common feeling when learning something new. You might feel frustrated when you can't remember a word or when grammar feels too difficult. But frustration can also be a sign that you are growing. If you channel frustration the right way, it can motivate you to push harder and improve. 6. Pride. Pride is another important emotion. When you achieve something small like finishing a book, writing an essay, or holding a 5-minute English conversation, you feel proud. This pride builds confidence, and confidence fuels motivation. Every small success creates a positive cycle of motivation. Now, let's look at the psychology behind emotions and motivation. Scientists explain this connection through something called the reward system in the brain. When you achieve something, your brain releases dopamine, a chemical that makes you feel good. That dopamine boost motivates you to repeat the behavior. This is why celebrating small wins is so important. It keeps your brain motivated to continue. For example, if you study English for 20 minutes and reward yourself with something small like listening to your favorite song, your brain starts associating English study with positive emotions. Over time, your brain actually looks forward to studying. But what happens when emotions are low? When you feel bored, tired, or discouraged, motivation becomes weak. This is why it's important to actively create positive emotions in your learning process. You don't just wait for motivation, you build it. Here are some practical strategies to use emotions to boost your motivation. 1. Celebrate small wins. Don't wait for big achievements. Celebrate little successes. Finished a chapter? Celebrate. Learned 5 new words? Celebrate. These moments of pride keep you motivated. 2. Add fun to the process. Turn learning into something enjoyable. Play English games, watch interesting shows, or talk with friends online. The more fun you create, the stronger your emotions will drive your motivation. 3. Use music and environment. Music can instantly change your mood. Create a playlist that inspires you while studying. Also, choose an environment that makes you feel energized, like a bright room with positive vibes. 4. Reframe frustration. Instead of thinking, "I'm failing," think, "This means I'm learning." Changing your emotional reaction to frustration can turn it into motivation. 5. Visualize success. Take a few minutes to imagine yourself speaking English fluently, traveling with confidence, or achieving your dream job. Visualization creates excitement and positive emotions that fuel motivation. Let me share a story to illustrate this. There was a young man learning English who often felt discouraged. He thought he wasn't making progress fast enough. One day, his teacher asked him to write down every small success he had achieved in the last 6 months. He realized he could now understand English songs better, order food in English, and even write emails. Suddenly, he felt pride and joy. That emotional shift reignited his motivation. He went on to achieve fluency because he learned to celebrate his emotions instead of ignoring them. So, the big lesson here is this: emotions are the fuel of motivation. If you manage your emotions wisely, you can stay motivated even when the road gets tough. Don't just focus on logic and discipline, also focus on creating excitement, joy, and pride in your journey. To summarize: 1. Positive emotions like excitement, curiosity, and joy fuel motivation naturally. 2. Negative emotions like fear and frustration can also motivate if managed correctly. 3. Pride from small successes creates confidence and long-term motivation. 4. The brain's reward system uses dopamine to encourage repeated actions. 5. You can boost motivation by celebrating small wins, making learning fun, using music, reframing frustration, and visualizing success. The power of accountability akaka is closely related to social support. Accountability means being responsible for your actions, either to yourself or to others. When someone else knows your goals, you're more likely to follow through. Why? Because humans naturally care about their reputation and consistency. We don't want to let others down. Research shows that people are up to 65% more likely to achieve goals when they are held accountable. Accountability increases commitment and creates structure, especially for long-term goals. Ways to use social support and accountability. 1. Study with a partner or group. Join a friend, family member, or online community who shares your goal. For English learners, this could mean practicing conversations, sharing vocabulary lists, or reviewing exercises together. Group study keeps you engaged, and the shared progress motivates everyone. 2. Share goals publicly. Tell someone about your goals, friends, family, or social media followers. Public commitments increase accountability because others know what you're aiming for. The desire to follow through strengthens your motivation. 3. Hire a coach or mentor. Mentors and coaches provide guidance, feedback, and encouragement. They help track progress, correct mistakes, and celebrate achievements, which makes learning more structured and motivating. 4. Check in regularly, even without a group. You can create accountability by checking in with someone regularly. 4. Example: message a friend after every study session, or send weekly progress updates. This simple act keeps you consistent. 5. Reward each other. Celebrate not only your own wins, but also the progress of those around you. Sharing joy and celebrating achievements builds a positive environment that motivates everyone to continue. 6. Participate in challenges, competitions, or group projects can increase motivation through social pressure and fun. For example, joining a 30-day English speaking challenge encourages daily practice while connecting you with others who share the same goal. Story example. Motivation through social support. Let me share a story. There was a student named Ahmed who struggled with staying consistent in English practice. One day, he joined an online English study group. The group met every evening for 30 minutes to practice speaking. At first, he was shy and nervous, but gradually he became confident. Seeing others succeed inspired him, and the accountability of showing up every day kept him motivated. Over months, Ahmed's English improved significantly, not just because of the content, but because of the social support and accountability from the group. Asterisk, the big idea here is this: motivation is amplified when you are not alone. Humans thrive in communities, and connecting with others who share your goals provides energy, encouragement, and accountability. If you want to stay motivated consistently, don't just rely on yourself, seek social support. Share your goals and create a network that encourages growth. In the next part, we'll explore how to set SMART goals for maximum motivation, combining everything we've learned about habits, purpose, emotions, rewards, and social support. SMART goals provide clarity, structure, and measurable progress, making long-term motivation achievable. We are going to dive into a practical and powerful strategy for achieving your goals. Setting SMART goals. You might have heard the term SMART goals before, but what does it really mean, and why does it matter for motivation? SMART goals are specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound objectives that give your efforts direction, structure, and clarity. When you set SMART goals, motivation becomes easier because your path is clear, your progress is measurable, and your achievements are tangible. Breaking down SMART goals. 1. Specific. A specific goal clearly defines what you want to achieve. Vague goals like "I want to improve my English" are difficult to act on. Instead, make your goal specific. I want to improve my English listening skills by practicing 30 minutes every day. Specific goals reduce uncertainty and make it easier to start taking action. 2. Measurable. A measurable goal allows you to track progress. When you can measure your progress, you feel a sense of accomplishment along the way, which reinforces motivation. For example, "I will learn 50 new English words this month" is measurable. "Well, I want to get better at vocabulary" is not. 3. Achievable. An achievable goal is realistic given your current resources, skills, and time. Setting goals that are too difficult can lead to frustration and burnout, while setting easy goals may not challenge you enough. For example, if you currently know 200 English words, aiming to learn 500 in a week is unrealistic. Instead, aim for 50 to 100 words per week, something challenging but doable. 4. Relevant. A relevant goal aligns with your purpose, values, and long-term objectives. Motivation is strongest when your goals have personal meaning. For example, learning English to travel, work internationally, or connect with new people is more motivating than learning just because someone told you to. 5. Time-bound. A time-bound goal has a clear deadline, which creates urgency and prevents procrastination. For example, "I will complete this English listening course in 3 months" provides a time frame that motivates action and allows you to measure progress along the way. Why SMART goals boost motivation? SMART goals enhance motivation because they remove ambiguity and create a clear roadmap for action. When your goals are specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound, you know exactly what to do, how to do it, and when it should be done. This clarity reduces stress, increases confidence, and keeps your focus sharp. Additionally, SMART goals help you break big objectives into smaller, manageable steps. Each small step provides a sense of achievement, which reinforces motivation and builds momentum. This aligns perfectly with the strategies we've discussed in earlier parts using purpose, habits, emotions, rewards, and accountability to maintain. Motivation. Practical steps to set SMART goal. Step 1. Define your goal clearly. Write down exactly what you want to achieve. Be as specific as possible. Instead of "I want to speak English fluently," write "I want to hold a 10-minute conversation in English with a native speaker," without using a dictionary. Step 2. Make it measurable. Decide how you will track progress. Will you count new words learned, minutes of practice, or completed lessons? Measurement provides feedback and satisfaction. Step 3. Ensure it's achievable. Assess your resources, time, and current skill level. Choose a goal that challenges you but is realistic. Small, consistent progress is more effective than attempting a giant leap. Step 4. Connected to your purpose. Ask yourself why this goal matters. Aligning your goal with your purpose transforms it from a task into a meaningful journey. For example, "I want to learn English to communicate confidently in my international job" is highly motivating. Step 5. Set a deadline. Decide when you want to achieve your goal. Break the timeline into weekly or monthly milestones to stay consistent and motivated. Deadlines create urgency and focus your energy. Asterisk, the big idea here is this: long-term motivation is not a fleeting feeling, it is a deliberate, structured practice. By integrating purpose, habits, milestones, social support, growth mindset, reflection, and emotional management into your life, motivation becomes resilient, consistent, and sustainable over months and years. Thank you so much for joining me, Sara, here on Super English Talks. I hope this episode has inspired you to embrace lifelong learning and to continue improving your English step by step. Remember, every word you learn, every podcast you listen to, and every book you read brings you closer to your goals.